You cannot stop me. Soon, I will consume every living creature on this planet. Well, you are not starting with us!
Well, it's that time of the week again, folks, and I think we're at the right episode now that we should have been about 3 weeks ago. Anyway, this week we have possibly one of the weirdest episodes to come from the show, and should shit you up regarding going camping again in the future. It's saying something though if this is one of the weirdest, given everything else that we've had, but it provides us with a rather badass addition to the roster that sadly starts to look like a fucking cosplay kit in the reboot series, but for now at least is treated like a legitimate threat.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
If you didn't like mushrooms before, you aren't gonna like it anymore after this, so let's break this fucker down.
Be afraid.
We start with Ben and Gwen arguing as usual over who gets to celebrate turning presumably 11 as they share the same birthday.
What? What the fuck?
Are we sure they're not twins? Anyway, as they debate over who has the right over Grandpa Max's attention for the day, Ben's scratching the shit out of his feet and is offered some powder to treat the dear athlete. When suddenly a young lad stumbles into the road on a fucking mountainside, and this causes Max to swerve with the lad diving out of the way and rolling over the edge.
You fool.
Ben goes cannonbolt, saving him from a certain doom, only for the young boy to pass out.
Rise and shine, Stubby. Wake up. Up and at him. Fine then.
They get him back to the rust bucket and discover where he came from, and that his name is Gilbert, but not before Ben continually pokes a fungal infection on his arm.
Excuse me.
What the fuck is wrong with this kid? When they find the location of Gilbert's camp, they see it's recently abandoned with a bunch of hot food left on the table that Ben makes a correct decision over for once and wolfs down, when they quickly discover a set of twins, a brother and sister combo named Andy and Mandy. They find out that everybody left due to something around the camp, and as they go to leave, Max discovers that the rust bucket's engine is now suddenly coated in fungus, so they decide to retreat inside. After much debating, Max decides to head out and find a means to repair the rust bucket, and possibly some support while the kids are entrusted to Ben and Gwen.
Not a great plan.
They begin to argue again until Gilbert awakens and warns Ben about the threat of something out there when they hear Max's scream in the distance. Ben goes wild mutt to track him down and encounters a ditch full of vegetation that has begun to expand. Without warning in this moment, tendrils reach up from the depths and grab Wildvine far under. He manages to escape in this moment, but as the watch times out, it leaves Ben surrounded by an army of living mushrooms with multiple mouths and eyes. Ben then shows an impressive display of rock climbing by scaling back up the hole and manages to evade the horde. He then returns to the crew and informs them of what he found. They decide collectively that they need to get the fuck out of there and find a way to wipe out the vegetation as well. Before they're ready to move, however, several sprouts begin to surface from below, and Gwen determines that if they unleash the spores inside, this could consume America and eventually the whole world.
Well, that's fucking not good.
Ben moves to get Max to accelerate while Gwen stays with the kids to hold off the battalion of shrooms that are steadily surrounding them. A battle ensues with the kids finding creative ways to handle them, and Ben manages to locate Max, but as he times out, he's quickly caught again.
God fucking damn it!
When he awakens, Ben tries to dial in another hero, only for it to suddenly slam down and introduce us to a new alien, Wildvine. A species known as Florana that can do some impressive moves in a short time, as we see here, and because of what Wildvine is, Ben's able to communicate with the mycelium that is controlling everything here. And as it turns out, it simply wants to join up with everyone and sing Kumbaya by transforming the world into one large spore and spread it out across the galaxy. Ben manages to stop it through the brilliant use of Chekhov's gun in this moment, coming back to the foot powder from the start, and destroys the mycelium with his shoe, which begins to rot it from the inside and equally destroys all the forces above, and Gwen and Stinkfly later on take out what's remaining. We then end the episode with the gang in a diner where Gwen offers the birthday spot to Ben, who arrogantly takes it as you normally would expect, and they collectively agree that Max has the worst timing when he orders a mushroom pizza for them all to share. So that's now 2 new additions to the watch this season, and out of both options so far, I have a greater interest in Wildvine. The design is unique, the abilities are practical to the idea of something like him, the presence is unsettling, making him a perfect follow-up to Ghostfreak, and honestly, he feels like the most versatile to Cannonball, who can simply bounce his ass around and ball up. Not to undermine Cannonbolt here, he's certainly handy, but nothing quite what we see here with our latest partner in crime. Wildvine does become a rarity for Ben to dial in beyond this point, but whenever he does get called into action, it's always functional, and even by mistake, Ben's able to make the transformation work. I love the idea of Wildvine, and I remembered something recently that offers some food for thought about his appearance now. If I remember rightly, it's actually where Ghostfreak came from. The story follows is that apparently he was possessing a Florana at the time that the DNA for that species was being processed and uploaded to the watch. So it took both that and him along with it, possibly offering a reason for why Wildvine's inclusion maybe now, and possibly answer a reason for why it couldn't be possible to access him before with Ghostfreak still dominating the watch. Or the likeliest reason could be the sheer mass of vegetation surrounding him in this moment. I just feel it's an interesting point to bring up given that these episodes are being reviewed in the production/chronological order and we just lost Ghostfreak. Anyway, speaking of the vegetation, they are of course the villains of this week, with a basic concept of global domination and actually possess a potential threat level here. Think about The Last of Us, for example, and what the vegetation did in that fucking universe. And also, I'd hate to think about what those tiny mouths could do when they're put to work. But I can't decide if the threat of them here is undone or not as to how they were defeated. A little sprinkle of powder and bang, the dirt is gone. They weren't exactly a taxing villain when they could simply just be wiped out with a bit of powder being showered over them and that was it. But I did also mull over this over the past few weeks since watching it, and the very idea of the foot powder being able to defeat them doesn't feel too far-fetched and could protect them in this instance of defeat. Consider this, for example, that they hadn't set up shop long before Ben destroyed them, meaning that they weren't given much of a chance to be able to build up a resistance against the powder. A similar process if you imagine to how bugs build up an immunity to repellents over time. I might be reaching, but let's be honest, this villain wasn't exactly enticing. Moving on though, our lead protagonist certainly stepped up this week, taking the charge of both a rescue operation and extermination. Ben's efficiency with the watch this time around shows he's beginning to understand the appropriate uses for the likes of Cannonbolt, Wildmutt, Accelerate, and Stinkfly. Cannonbolt was the best chance to protect Gilbert given the weather and the drop below. Wildmutt possesses the tracking abilities, Accelerate return him to the location successfully and found Max quickly, and then Stinkfly could distribute the powder over the land with conclusive results. For once, weirdly, it felt like Ben did us proud, and then to Gwen demonstrating a level of proficiency she had yet to in the series. She led Gilbert, Andy and Mandy to safety and trusted them to have her back, whilst coming to an agreement on what to do with her goofy cousin, and assured audiences that both her and Ben can work well together when intended, subtly answering the question throughout the episode about whether they can actually agree on anything or not, and that one thing that they can is their shared respect and protection and love for that of Grandpa Max, and each other whether they want to admit it or not. The one question I do have though following this, and really something I never considered before for anybody who knew about Ben's abilities, is how do they know that these kids or anybody else wouldn't say anything about this and give away Ben's secret?
No, he's got a point.
We know by the time of Ultimate Alien that Ben's secret is known publicly, but you're telling me that no one at this point would have put two and two together about him disappearing when the aliens arrive, or blatantly transforming in front of them? Ah, fuck it, I don't know. But for now at least, the general premise of this episode is decent enough. The villain is run-of-the-mill, the addition of Wildvine is the clincher for sure, but I love the message of it, that compromise can be found when it matters, and ultimately, Ben and Gwen united for once, and there wasn't a hesitation in sight. That's all I've got for this week though, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. Leave a like on this video to help get it around. Subscribe for more like this down the road. And until next time everyone, take care and I'll catch you later.